We are joined now by Vicki McKenna for our weekly Culture Cast segment. Always sparks flying when we get together, and boy, there is some really, really treasonous stuff going on. There's really ways in which this government are doing things that has not been done, I can imagine, in the history of the Republic, assuming we still have one. Vicki, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Duke. And yeah, we are goose stepping toward authoritarianism. You know what, you could even say we're there, and almost nobody's noticing, at least not noticing in any capacity that's raising alarms for the general population of the American people. But things that happen in East Germany, things that happen in the Soviet Union, things that we are reading about now from defectors coming from North Korea, these are things that are happening in the United States. And that's very, very concerning, particularly when we're talking about the constraints, deliberate constraints being put on the Bill of Rights.
Well, Tucker Carlson had an explosive segment yesterday explaining just this phenomenon, and he based it on a new article that was written by Revolver. Tell us what the article had to say, Vicki.
This is worth checking out. If there's one thing you would read today, it would be at revolver.news, and it is the story about the unindicted co-conspirators in the in the January 6th Capitol protests. And what the article details is the actual criminal charges that, the criminal complaints that were filed against multiple people. And remember, multiple people, we're talking about a nationwide dragnet. I'm not sure how many people saw the billboards in their areas, but certainly where I live, there were billboards advertising. If you saw anyone who mentioned that they went to the Capitol, contact the FBI immediately. And what the criminal complaints detailed, according to Revolver, is that there were multiple unindicted co-conspirators. And as they looked deeper into the criminal complaints, what they discovered was that in very many cases, the unindicted co-conspirators either participated in the exact same kind of activity that resulted in charges against people who are now sitting in solitary confinement without bail in the DC jail, or worse behavior than the folks who are actually charged. And what the conclusion from the reporters on this was, it is very likely that the unindicted co-conspirators are either paid for confidential informants by the FBI or actual undercover FBI employees themselves. And so what you find when you read this article and you actually get to read some of the criminal complaints is that it appears that the unindicted co-conspirators fomented the mayhem, fomented the chaos, created the conditions, and that the folks who were actually charged were the ones that were just simply following along.
For a long time, we knew that there were many liberal operatives in the crowd, that this was not simply Bubba and his banjo-playing conservative white men attacking the Capitol building. We've known for a long time that there have been all sorts of strange characters from the left who were in that so-called riot. Now what we're finding out is that it's very plausible to believe that the FBI staged this entire thing as a way of punctuating and forgetting, and in my mind, getting people to stop talking about the questionable election results, and now showing you this is why we had to get Trump, because of this violent attack that was coming.
Yes, and also this is leading every declaration that the president has made about domestic extremism since January 6th. It is a very, very good thing the Republicans didn't vote in favor of a 9/11 style commission for the January 6th riots, because it would have simply been a way to build a scaffolding to hang all of these alarmist charges on. Merrick Garland yesterday said that what we're looking for is people who believe in the superiority of the white race, and they are, willing to commit violent acts of extremism. And so that's the single largest terrorist threat. They wanted to hang everything on the scaffolding that was going to be built by that 9/11 style commission on 1/6. Now we've got some reporting that strongly suggests that there does need to be an investigation of 1/6, but not the way the Democrats envision it, not a narrative creating exercise, but an actual investigation. You see what happens when real reporters start digging into stuff that is sitting in plain sight. And it strongly suggests that the United States government fomented the violence that has now been used to justify domestic surveillance programs that were lauded by Merrick Garland and the DOJ yesterday, declarations that 50% of the country are nothing more than would-be violent white supremacists, and a whole host of other things.
And if this is true, and there's a lot of smoke here, we'll see if there's fire behind it. If this is true, this fits, right? That as an analogy, the white male in the 2020s, is setting up to be the Jew of the 1930s. He's responsible for all these things, a catch-all category. It's the scapegoat on which this kind of radical rethinking of government is going to take place at the expense of white males.
Now, remember, a lot of the folks that were at the Capitol on January 6th, and people who are members of Oath Keepers, or people who are members, I'm not sure you can be a member of the 3%ers, but people who declare themselves that way, or folks who are affiliated with the Proud Boys, a lot of these folks are veterans. And so it is also teed up the Defense Department to claim that what it has to do is cleanse the ranks of the United States military for anybody who would have questioned the integrity of the last election, or somebody who would reject CRT, somebody who would reject this neo-Marxism. And it is so it's given license to Lloyd Austin to do to the military what Joe Biden wants to do to the rest of the country, what Merrick Garland wants to do to the rest of the country, what the teachers union wants to do to the schools. And it's all based on the 1-6 lie that this was an armed insurrection meant to overthrow the United States government. The more you look at these documents, as Revolver did, and I know that they're going to be doing more digging. I also know that Senator Johnson is also going to be doing some digging on this. The more you question the actual premise of the narrative itself, and that is that there were any groups there that were going to Washington, D.C. specifically with the goal of creating chaos or a riot or mayhem of any kind, that the ones who did were stoked on by employees of the federal government who needed to have something to make their case.
Back for our second segment with Vicki McKenna on CultureCast. Vicki, we talked a lot about the Revolver report, the idea that maybe it seems like the FBI had a huge plan in orchestrating the 1-6 so-called riot, that it was not a spontaneous riot. It was not an attempt by conservatives to overthrow the government. It was an orchestrated plan to make this seem this way. And it just, as we said at the end of the last segment, this alone, there's nothing before this that really happened in Trump's administration. There's nothing since January 1st that would suggest that we have this huge problem with white males trying to overthrow the government. Nevertheless, because of that one incident, which now looks like it may have been staged to some large degree, this is the reason why the military now is brainwashing cadets to believe all of this nonsense, critical race theory. It's forcing veterans who are retiring into programs that will de-weaponize them. It's what's going on with critical race theory in the schools. So on that one incident, Vicki, Joe Biden is setting aside, start with this, he's setting aside $100 million to surveil his own people. Talk about that.
He's setting aside $100 million to hire agents to partner with big tech companies to create, quote, digital literacy programs that would monitor what you post on social media in order to ferret out this violent white supremacy that apparently exists, though none of us can actually point to it and identify where it's going on. We point to riots in Portland or in Seattle or in Baltimore or in Kenosha, and we're not seeing the violent white supremacy who wants to, declare the superiority of the white race. What we're seeing are flags for Antifa, flags for BLM, flags for other types of equity or anti-racism groups that are the ones starting the fires. So you're exactly right. The exact opposite of what we're being told is a threat is what the actual threat is. And the government is ignoring that. I know Senator Johnson has actually asked Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice and the FBI to please explain why federal charges are being dropped against people who attack federal buildings in Portland or attack federal buildings in Seattle or attack federal buildings across the United States in the name of anti-racism or Black Lives Matter. And the same is not happening to, a bunch of folks who are right now, a lot of them sitting in solitary confinement in a DC jail without the ability to bail themselves out, and they have been there for 5 months. He wants the answers to that. But we know the answer. The answer is this, that 1-6 was used now to justify any manner of insane, un-American, unconstitutional, Stasi-like actions that this administration wants to take. And they will take as much as they can, by the way, using the executive authority that the Biden administration has, but they're also going to have to propose legislation. So we have two pieces of legislation. One is $100 million to hire agents and partner with big tech to surveil us a la, the CCP's social credit system. And another one is a program to encourage people to rat out their neighbors and family members if they've noticed any type of, quote, extremist behavior or behavior that might indicate that they're violent. And then you have a companion, which is Merrick Garland issuing a piece of legislation, a call for passage of a piece of legislation that would allow the United States government to partner with also civilian law enforcement services to confiscate guns from people who are declared to be extremists or have the potential for violence, according to the definitions of domestic extremism, new to all of us. But now accepted by the Biden administration.
And you hit on something earlier in your comment there that I think has to be magnified. Extremism is defined now exclusively by the progressive left. They're the only ones who are allowed to do it. You challenge their definition, and Facebook and Twitter and everybody's going to come down on you. You're going to get canceled. Only the progressive left can tell you what an extremist is. And that's why Antifa is not, but what white conservatives are. Right? Antifa is not a problem. Black Lives Matter and its protests are not a problem. Anarchists in Seattle and Portland and all across the country who want to burn things down, they're not the issue. Radical college professors who, like the one we talked about last week, who want to put 5 bullets in the brains of white people, they're not a problem. The white people getting shot in the head, they're apparently the problem. And this is what's so Orwellian about this, right? It reeks of scapegoatism. It has nothing at all to do with any reality. You said it. Look around you. I don't know. I mean, you and I are conservatives. You think the so-called white supremacists would be buzzing around us. I've never met one. I'm still waiting to meet one. And I've lived in the South. I never met one there either. Where are they? Where are these people that you're saying are so dangerous? Well, when you really look at it, you and I are those people, right? Anybody who challenges the left at all.
Right, because remember, extremism is defined as somebody who thinks that there's a reason to question the integrity of the last election. Extremism is somebody who believes in the Second Amendment, who believes in the right to keep and bear arms, and who actually understands the purpose of the Second Amendment was to defend against an authoritarian, tyrannical government. You say things like that out loud, or you assert your right to defense, and that automatically makes you an extremist. You're somebody who says that my first duty is an oath to uphold this Constitution, like the Oath Keepers, who are veterans and former law enforcement. Veterans and former law enforcement cannot be trusted. They're the new domestic extremists. But a crazy woman who wants to put 5 bullets into the head of white people because she loathes them so much, or Antifa, or Black Lives Matter, who wants to burn down cities and declare an end to capitalism and the patriarchy and the Bill of Rights itself. No. They're the mainstream. The rest of us are the ones that the government has to be worried about. And make no mistake, people, we're not exaggerating. That's exactly what this government is saying.